In the next video, we have Duke Timothy. He was a pretty awesome interview. Listen to the way that he talked for the last 37 years, I believe. He's been fighting for longer than I've been alive. I was born in '85. He said he started as a teenager in '83. So that's a pretty phenomenal experience that he's got. And his his take on fighting was pretty unique, and I feel like I connected with it personally. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. So, without further ado, here's his interview. We are live with His Royal Majesty Duke Timothy from Aethelmark. Sorry if I mispronounced that, Aethelmark. Um, I don't know him very well, but I hear amazing things about him. In fact, one of the most amazing things I've heard about him is he recently won Crown Tournament with a buckler. So that's saying something significant about his fighting prowess and dedication to making himself a better fighter. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to him and let him tell us a little bit about himself and then go into his personal 5 methods of being a better SCA fighter.
As you said, I'm Timothy of Arundel. I authorized in 1983, so I've been doing this for way too long. I authorized 2 weeks after my 16th birthday, and I'm now 53. So I've gone the whole spectrum from young punk kid to fat old man. I've had the pleasure of winning Crown Tournament 7 times in 3 different kingdoms. I was King of Kaid in 1992. I won 2 Eastern Crown Tournaments, fall of 94, fall of 97, and now I've had 4 in Aethelmark, the last of which, as you said, was with the buckler. And, you know, I'm going to cover 5 things that I think are truly important to being a better fighter. One of these that I've watched was a little more structured than I'm going to be, so I'm going to kind of do my 5 things, and they're so interrelated, I'm going to bounce back and forth between them as makes sense. First thing is you have to treat fighting like a buffet. I don't have the Timothy of Arundel style. I took pieces of my stuff from everybody. Second thing is you have to find your drive, your motivation. Just saying you want to be good isn't good enough. You have to find out what it is, and I've got some suggestions, and you've got to go with that. You have to travel, and I'm not just talking, I'm in business in Dallas. I'm going to a fighter practice in Dallas. You have to travel a lot. You have to understand the human physiology to understand where a fight is going to progress. And the last thing I want to touch base on, the single most important concept in fighting, especially if you like to infight, is initiative. And I'll cover that. That ties into physiology a lot. As for drive, like I said, I'm going to bounce back and forth. When I started to get active, we were kind of a communal pool of squires, and we all pushed each other. You know, everybody made that practice. They pushed themselves because they know if I didn't make that practice when I went to the tourney on Saturday, you know, Duke Malcolm was going to beat me. Well, Squire Malcolm was going to beat me, or Squire now Count Thorbrand was going to beat me, or Squire now Graf Stefan of Wolfshaven was going to beat me. The crew I grew up with was just brutal, and we got that way because we constantly pushed each other. You didn't want to miss a practice because you knew you were going to play catch up. In Atlantia at the time, I was knighted in Atlantia, yet another kingdom I traveled to. We had a tournament, the Atlantean Unbelted Tourney, which was, in our mind, you know, yes, we'd all like to have been king at that time, But to us, that was the crown jewel. We knew we had to get that if we wanted to be the top dog. That was the tourney we, as an unbelt, had to take. So if you slacked off, you knew that Kuhn wouldn't, or Andrew wouldn't, or who have you. A lot of these guys, none of you probably know, but absolute beasts. I'd have to sit down and add up how many crowns the collective group of us did, but it's a scary number in kingdoms all over the known world. So I don't know if I don't know if you have a squire brother that will motivate you. You want to push him while he pushes you, or if it's you want to find that one guy next up on the list above you. I'm not saying, pick out random fighter and watch video of him and think nothing but him, but find that guy who's a little bit better than you and pass him. Find the next guy who's a little bit better than you and pass him, and keep working your way up. Keep hunting people, not in a bad way, just to motivate yourself. All right. I just went toe to toe with so-and-so, did very, very well against him. Now I'm going to go to that next guy and I'm going to get that next guy, and push yourself up the list. I had gotten to the point, I moved out in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania a little over 10 years ago. There was locally nobody who could run with me. And when I didn't travel, practices were boring because, I could fight at 10% and still lay waste. That's what actually drove me to pick up Buckler, because heater was boring. In the kingdom, we had 2 or 3 really good fighters, and they were the only ones who could really push the living crap out of me. If I didn't bring my A game, they were gonna, take me to school. And switching to Buckler, it was a challenge because you've got so little margin for error, and that gets back to, that ties into what I was saying about traveling. Again, because I was in the middle of nowhere, in order to get an opponent at my level, I had to drive 3 hours. I drove to the Nutley practice in New Jersey, which, if you're ever in the New York metropolitan area after this stuff passes, the Nutley, New Jersey fighter practice is scary. With a little bit of notice to let people know to show up, I would probably be, when it's active again, I would be the 8th or 10th best guy at the practice. You could have Stefan von Dresden, you could have Gregor, you could have Earl Horick, who probably hasn't got the name recognition, but is an absolute beast. You'd have Brennan, you would have Duke Kelson. I mean, the list is just scary. Well worth the trip. Heck, with if flights are still cheap, when all this thing settles down, it would be worth the trip out. But you have to travel. Not only do you expose yourself to things that, in your little local pool, if you're the big fish, that's all well and good. And wow, I'm really kicking butt in my local pool. I can beat all these guys. And then you go out of town and do a tournament, and, some guy you've never met, never heard of, takes you down with a technique you've never seen. You have to, I always refer to that as inbreeding. If you're fighting the same guys all the same time, they're not going to find holes in your form that somebody else would. So when I'm gearing up for a crown, I'll travel down to Atlantia to a couple of practices. There's a couple of them that are about 3 hours away from me. Sometimes I'll go to the Storvik practice in Washington, D.C. Sometimes I'll go to the Lockmere practice just south of Baltimore. I'll head across to Nutley in the East Kingdom. I'll head out to Pittsburgh, the BMDL practice in Ethelmark, because, like I said, when you fight different people, they're going to find different holes. In your local group, maybe somebody doesn't realize hey, Tim's rotating, blocking when he blocks his leg. He's leaving that little gap, and I'm going to snipe at it. So I go to these other practices, and somebody finds my flaw, and hey, I got to look at this. Or maybe I've got that one shot that's really laying waste locally, but at the other practice, these guys have been doing it for years. So, you know, it's what sucks when you live in an area with no population density. I mean, if you lived in an area like the Dallas Fort Worth area, from what I understand, there's 5 or 6 practices there every week. You could go to a different practice each night. I don't have that luxury where I live. Most people don't. It's different now than it used to be. A lot of us old farts, when we joined the SCA, the old guys were in their mid-20s. Nobody much had wives, and certainly none of us had children. So it would be easy to, grab your buddies, throw them into the back of a hatchback, and drive to an event 8 hours away on no notice. When I was a squire, I was in Maryland. Atlantia had a war at the time with Trimeris, even though we didn't actually have a border. Meridies was in the way. And one year, Trimeris would drive up to South Carolina, and the next year we would drive down to Jacksonville, and we would think nothing about throwing a bunch of us in a van and driving 12 hours, when everybody got off of work, getting on site at 4 a.m., fighting all day, and then leaving early Sunday morning. Well, that's a little bit extreme, but I guess that's why that's why I'm still not opposed to driving 2.5 hours for a fighter practice, once or twice a month, just to keep it fresh, to keep myself exposed to different things. All right. But back to the buffet concept. Because I travel, and I've always traveled, it's easy when you get exposed to something, when you see, Sir so-and-so or even Squire so-and-so throw a shot, figure it out, see how it works out, try it out. If somebody offers you a tip, try it. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. I don't have the Tim style. There is no Timothy of Arundel style. I've taken so many pieces from so many different schools. There was a form that was quite popular in Atlantia for a long time, House Oldcastle. I have a lot of their stuff incorporated in my game. When I was a young squire, we all chipped in $25 and flew one of Duke Paul's students out, Duke Sagan, who did a weekend fight practice. If I remember, it was actually on the grounds of CIA headquarters, if I remember correctly. But I was 17 or 18 years old, and I learned tons that day. And like I said, when somebody offers you advice, it won't hurt to try it out. I really don't. I'm not a big fan of private practices, and this is my squire. Nobody else can work with him. No, that's ridiculous. If somebody shows one of my squires something and they think they can put it into their form, that's great. I'm really happy, and I'm happy to work with that. I find that private schools and people who don't want anybody else training their squires or their guys are doing them a huge disservice. Yes, you do have some people who, I hate to use the word mansplaining, but you have a lot of fighters, some who aren't really very good, or some who are not as good as they think they are, who love to hear the sounds of their own voice. Be polite, let them run their yap. But you'll be surprised at how many good and positive, productive things you can learn doing it that way. But like I said, that's how I got where I got. We had kind of a communal pool of squires. Once the SCA in my area, our little shire, got to the point where we could actually travel, I was probably in 2.5 years before I met my first squire, and that was just, wow, this guy is a squire. So one of the guys I was coming up with and I would drive down, we would drive about 90 minutes to a fighter practice in the DC metro area. That was amazing. In 1982, 83, this fighter practice had probably 60 people at it, at least a dozen nights.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually we were, like I said, a communal pool of squires. Didn't matter who the knight was. You know, if he saw something to work on in your form, he walked over and worked with you on a technique that you needed help with. They were not, none of the knights were possessive of their guy, and none of them were true believers in their form. And so we all made huge amounts of progress. We developed some stuff there that later on pollinated across the SCA. I mean, I remember going to a Penzic, maybe 14 or 15, maybe Penzic 16, whatever it was, and we had done a bunch of different permutations on wraps and thumb leader shots. And I remember getting yelled at by fighters on the other side. Somebody's hitting me in the back of the head. No, that was me. I threw that shot. No, look, this is what I hit you with. There's nobody behind you. I'm sitting here. And it was just, we developed that by having a really hungry group of guys who were eager to learn, eager to experiment and figure out what we're going to. Mm-hmm. And that brings me to physiology. Physiology and what I'll call initiative tie in together. When you do your Pel work, throw a shot, leave your hand stopped at the Pel. How do I, where can I go with this shot? And you'll find, for instance, a flat snap from the vanilla on the shoulder 101 that everybody is taught. That's probably the single most versatile shot, because stance. You can go anywhere from that. But when you go to that next spot, there's only so many places you can go to. If I throw a snap to the left temple as a right-handed fighter, again, from there, I can go to the right temple. I can throw anywhere along the right side of the body, but without rechambering the shot, I can't throw to the right thigh without rechambering it. So you need to understand the physiology when you're watching your opponent, so that if somebody throws at my left temple, I know that and this is how I get by in buckler. I know that when they throw that shot, I no longer have to worry about my left thigh. I can use and I don't have to worry about that whole zone, because if they're going to throw there, they have to regroup the shot somehow. They can't, you can't go from here to here with any kind of force. Yes, I suppose you can kind of back it. You're not going to hit with anything because the human arm doesn't move that way. And the same thing goes for any shot. So when I fight buckler, what I'm doing is I'm couching my stance based on where my opponent can throw. They have it that from whatever stance they are in, there is one main thing that they're going to do, and I'm going to try and wall off everything else, so they have to go in that one spot. And I'm ready for that shot when they throw. This is where it's coming. And I'll block in it. I will make the block, control their weapon, whether it's with my sword or my buckler, move it out of position, and once I control the weapon, they can't touch me. So with a 10 or 12 inch diameter buckler, it doesn't matter if I've got if they've got a 36 inch heater, if they can't hit me because their arm physically doesn't move that way, I'm golden. I mean, I will literally sit there and do slow work and Pel work, where that's the whole thing. Okay, you've thrown this, where can I go now? And that ties in with initiative. Sorry if I'm a little confusing. This is easier to do in person rather than on a face-to-face discussion like this.
Absolutely. I think I'm following along. Hopefully everybody else is. So,
but initiative, I do a lot of infighting, even with a buckler. I use a relatively short sword which makes a lot of the stuff that I do functional. I couldn't do a lot of the stuff that I do with a really long sword. To infight, you have to have the initiative. I use the analogy of a shitty chess player, and I am a shitty chess player. But if I put you in check, from an analogy point of view, I don't have to have lots of fancy chess moves. If I can continue putting you in check, you're not going to be able to develop an offense. And eventually you're going to make a mistake and I'm going to hit you. So I'm going to throw a snap. You're going to make the block. Before you can get your next shot off, I'm throwing a one beat shot. Maybe I'm throwing to your right temple, you know, the old TikTok, if you will. Maybe from the snap, I'm thrusting it. Maybe I'm rotating it over into a Molinet. The thing is, I keep the beat. I keep the initiative. I keep you on the defensive. If I'm running the offense, I want to do it in such a way that I never give you a pause to develop an offense to take the initiative away from me. And that's, well, I'll get into my style flaws in a minute because it does tie into this. And that's the problem with, from this perspective, a wrap shot. And that's the easiest place to steal the initiative. When I talk about physiology, imagine I'm doing TikTok from the left temple to the right temple. And the next shot, I decide to throw a deep wrap to the back of the head. I've thrown that deep wrap to the back of the head. Without regrouping my stance, where can I hit as a one beat shot? Nowhere. So when I'm fighting and somebody throws a deep wrap or another shot that they have no one beat shot from, I look at it as like a free shot. I can use my shield and snatch theirs and hit them. I can do whatever I want movement wise to take control because they can't hit me. Their sword is physically in a position they have to reset, cock, if you will, before they can throw. If I don't know if I'm making it clear, it's clear in my head. But again, when you're to Pell, throw a wrap shot. Stop when you've made the impact. Stop with your sword on the back of the Pell and think, where can you throw without having to reset it in your position and throw again? As soon as somebody throws that shot, again, you have a free throw. When somebody throws that shot, the amount of times I will actually, okay, he's throwing a deep wrap. I'll actually block with my sword behind my head, and I'm already started the process of using my buckler to get up under their heater, to lift their heater up so I can hit him in the ribs. Or pressing their heater down with my buckler so they can't raise it, making the block and right into their head because they can't hit me. It's how you can make the buckler work or any other form.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this video so far, if you could do me a quick favor and hit that like and subscribe button down below, I'd really appreciate it. Thanks.
As I said, and those things you find out by sitting at a Pell. They've all covered cardio. They've all covered Pell work, and you got to keep doing Pell work and the importance of slow work, and all these things are true. But one of the things you have to do when you're doing Pell work is figure out where the heck can I go from here, and look at it from both perspectives. Where can my opponent go from here? You know, that's the biggest problem with buckler is blocking thrusts, because thrusts are essentially a zero beat shot. If somebody throws a snap, I have to plan on that. I have to track it if it has a thrusting tip. Is he going to move from that snap position to go over rotate a couple degrees and thrust? If he throws an offside, can he crank it into a thrust? If he doesn't have a thrusting tip, I don't have to worry about that. I know that from this offside, that side of the body is clear. The thrust isn't an issue because he doesn't have a thrusting tip. I know where to go from there. And you have to look at that. Once you understand where you can throw, then you understand where your opponent can and cannot throw. And so you can free up your defense to do other things. You can make your blocks with movement. You can make your blocks by jamming, by binding, anything you want to do. You have a whole bunch of other options when you understand the physiology. That's pretty well what I wanted to touch base on. About the only other thing I will say on drive, it kind of ties in with their cardio, and I'm kind of a heretic in this regard. I'll put my helmet on, and I will fight long past the time I'm totally exhausted, and I'm not fast enough to make the blocks that I would if I'd caught my breath, because it forces me to think. I've noticed very few people that do this, even the deeper end guys. I find that that's when I learn the most, when I am so exhausted I can barely lift my sword, and many a time it has served me well in a tournament. We're in the semifinals or the finals of a crown tournament. Neither one of us has any gas in the tank, and I'm used to thinking, okay, I'm totally exhausted. I know how much energy I can burn into one situation. Okay, once he throws this block, I can see him dropping his shield. Every time he throws this shot, I can make this one block and I can kill him there. And that comes into drive because, how long can you keep the helmet on? Can you fight 20 minutes straight? Can you fight an hour straight? The traveling is what enabled us to create the event Aedult Swim. For those of you who haven't made it out, you really ought to. I said I used to travel to the Nutley practice. At one time, it was up to about, every 6 weeks I'd go out to Nutley and I'd bring a bunch of my guys with. And but I could only fit 3 of us in a car. And I finally asked those guys, hey, if I pick a weekend, do you guys mind driving out and working with a bigger group of guys than the 4 of us I can fit in a car? And they all said, yeah, that'd be fine. And circumstances just worked out rather well. I had a business trip to Dallas a couple months before that, and I met Duke Sven. Well, now Duke Sven. At the time, he was Prince. And he's like, oh, heck yeah, I'll head out to that thing. A friend of ours in the kingdom, Baron Ichi, knew Sean pretty well and said he would try and browbeat his grace into coming out and joining us. And he did. And pretty much once we hit a tipping point of 5 or 6 guys at that level, it grew legs and everybody wanted to be there. We've gotten at the biggest one we had 700 people, 400 heavies, well over 100 shiv, and I lost track at 50 royal peers. And there were no egos, because no matter who you were, there was somebody there better. There were fighters I had never heard of, never met, who were just scary to watch. I mean, Sean, as I recall, Sean was able to get Duke Bryan to come down. Duke Bryan, I believe the gentleman's name was Nigel. Sean could back me up on that, who was, I guess, one of Bryan's other squires, who was just phenomenal. I'd never heard of the guy. And we had people from all, we had at one of them, we've had 17 kingdoms. It's worth the trip out. There are no egos. And as I said, there's always somebody better. This year, in the 2 days, I think my final tally was 60 some fighters. I'll fight anybody who wanted to take a few passes with me, but it was absolutely amazing. And if you want to be good, you've got to do things like that. When you go to Penzig or Gulf Wars, I hate to say Gulf Wars because it just got canceled, but when you go to one of those events, you got to be the first one on the pickup field and the last one off the pickup field. Not only will you get better, if you're an unbelt clawing for attention, that's where you have to be. And don't let anybody back you down. Go out and, take your lumps, take your beating. You'll get better quick. All right, I guess if people want to ask questions, I'm happy to.
Happy to answer.
Not much else I can go on about my things.
No, that's wonderful. I really related to the going to practice and then having to play catch up if you missed out on a practice. It's very similar to the way we run things here in town, where I'm from. We do need to have a little bit more structure with our practices. However, though, the first question is from Facebook. They want to know where exactly is Aedult Swim.
Aedult Swim is in Milton, Pennsylvania. It is, if you look on a map of Pennsylvania, it's about, you might as well, it's a suburb of Williamsport. The nearest major city, if you want to call it major, Harrisburg is about an hour south.
Got it.
We, most people, typically people fly into Philly, Philly, BWI, or Newark is the biggest ones people fly to.
Perfect. All right, so I've been challenged to ask this to every person that we have on the show. Out of your 5, which one was the easiest for you to accomplish, and which one was the hardest for you to accomplish? I mean, I understand that it's a constant thing going on, but you know what I mean.
I guess the easiest has always been treating it like a buffet. I mean, if somebody comes up with a good idea, I am happy to put that little concept into my bag of tricks. I try not to have a magic shot, though. I've had fakes. I've won tournaments throwing just the one damn shot. That's something I meant to discuss when I was talking about other things. When you have that one bag in your trick, that one shot, the amount of times I'll go to a practice and somebody find a hole in my stance, and they'll hit me once, and they'll hit me the next pass, and then they'll throw it again. Like, hey, you just used up your smart bomb. You've used it 3 times in the span of 5 minutes. Now I've seen it. Now I know how to prepare for it. When you meet me in Crown or you meet me in that bear pit, you can't use that shot anymore. But yeah, the buffet has been the easiest thing for me over the years, and the hardest thing has been drive. The hardest thing lately has been drive. When I was coming up as a squire, I needed that motivation. It was easy. I had that next guy on the rung that I wanted to take down. You get to a point where it's tough to stay challenged. Heater had gotten so boring that I switched to buckler, and that did it for the long time. And I was starting to get bored with buckler, and then Dietrich moved into town, and he's still kicking the crap out of me with buckler. I've been starting to pick up heater again just because I'm tired of getting my ass kicked by him. But I go through a lot of I've had a lot of periods when I'm just like, I'm down, and I guess that happens. I guess that happens to a lot of us as we get older. Right after I won Crown, I got a Facebook message from Duke Timothy from Kaid, and he was like, "How the hell do you get the drive?" And because he was wrestling with the same thing, and I know a lot of the really deep end guys. It's like it's just when especially if you're in an isolated area, why you got to go through all the effort. You got to make a sword when you blow out a sword, and you got to go to a fighter practice when nobody gives you any challenge. So yeah, for me, that's been the big one. Now I see occasional things pop up in chat that when I'm answering one, do we have a list of those that I can go back and type the answers to those later?
I will
I
read them. I'll read them to you. So I'm keeping
okay,
track. Yep.
okay, that's where we're at. All right,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
fine. All right, yeah, that's the easiest and the hardest ones. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question that I have is, when it comes, you've been doing this for a long time. I mean, I was born in '85, so you've been fighting my entire lifespan. Um, what are some of the tips you can give to newer fighters on longevity of fighting, how to prevent injuries or stuff like that?
Let me answer that a different way. I wish to hell I'd started stretching before fighting when I was 15. Um, I hurt. I after every practice I'm sore. Um, I'm the least limber person on the planet. I can see my career at any level of competitiveness, let
Mm-hmm.
alone at the deep end, coming to an end in the next 4 or 5 years just because I'm old and beat up. So yeah, stretching. Um, I saw on Kuhn's video the other day, he mentioned something about certain shots that he doesn't throw because he can't straighten his arm.
Yep.
Um, you know, and while I talked about physiology, I'm not a mundane doctor, but I was taught, one of the guys who taught me, Sir Torvald of Atlantia, rest his soul, wonderful guy. He taught me when you throw wraps, when you throw wrist leaders, not to lock the elbow. As
Mm-hmm.
long as you keep your elbow bent when you throw those shots, you're not going to blow out your elbow. And the elbow is one of the things I haven't gotten damaged. Um, and my shoulders have both been damaged from mundane. I did construction for years and years,
Mm-hmm.
um, but SCA wise, they haven't, knock on wood, been an issue. Um, but again, I mean, for those of you who uh, I'm ridiculously stocky. I have ridiculously large bones. So if somebody slide a frame, it's almost not fair for me to say that. I mean, I don't wear VAM braces even because, I got nice thick bones. I haven't worn VAM braces, and except for looking spiffy at a demo or something, I haven't worn VAM braces in 30 years.
Dang, that's impressive. All
And,
right. So the next question is from Lucas. And they ask, what is your biggest challenge fighting Buckler?
I talked about the thrust, but aside from that, my own little demon right now is people who are ridiculously fast. Again, I'm fighting Dietrich every week. Well, when we're able to fight, um, and I mean his hand speed is just ridiculous. But I can get 4 or 5 blocks into one of his combinations, 5 or 6 even sometimes, before he hits me. What I can't do because his speed is so damn fast is break the initiative. Once he gets the once he gets the initiative, when he gets started with his combinations, because with a buckler I am forced to sword block so much, um, I can't generate an offense. Um, there are some things that I've been able to work them in slow work where, okay, I know how to break out of this, but when push comes to fight against somebody at that speed, I fall back on my instinctive blocks and I can make the block, but eventually, I can't break into the new stuff. I can't, I'm so used to making these blocks like this against 99% of the populace. I can make this block and then throw it into a Molinet.
Yep.
But somebody with that hand speed, I just can't break I can't break the cycle.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So the next one comes from Mark, and they ask, what is your best advice for maintaining drive while we deal with the current quarantine status?
You got to figure out what's important. Right now, I'm kind of in a funk. for the same reason a lot of us are in a funk.
Mm-hmm.
I really miss not just the combat. I miss the camaraderie. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's why I stay doing this. And my answer isn't going to really work for most folks. My drive right now, every bit of effort I do to stay on top of my game now is so I can help my squires and help other people who want help.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for that, I'd be good completely sitting on my duff till this thing passes, and in 3 months I'll be back. 3 months of getting my ass kicked by Dietrich, I'll be back on my game. So what I would suggest is a lot of shadow boxing. Uh, when I'm at a practice and not fighting, I will watch other people spar.
Mm-hmm.
And say we have a very good unbelt Vasilis, and a lot of times I'm watching him fight Dietrich. Vasilis is probably the top unbelt at our practice. I'll watch him fight Dietrich, and I'll try and anticipate what Dietrich's going to throw, or what Vasilis is going to throw. And okay, Dietrich is going to throw this. All right. I'm tracking it. I'm following what he's doing. So I would watch tape and visualize myself as one of the opponents, trying to figure out where the other guy's going. When I watch tape, which is rare, from a mental point of view, I'll only watch myself on tape,
Mm-hmm.
because I figure, I hate to use the same name, he's probably blushing, but if I watch Dietrich fight, I'm not watching him saying, okay, where is that hole in his stance I can beat? And I'm going to adjust my form to that, because to my mind, I'm then fighting his game. I'm actually forcing myself to fight his game. I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'll look for things that I can get when I'm fighting him in real time, but I don't want to adjust my form the way I usually do my form.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to have, okay, this is the skill set I bring to the table when I fight Dietrich. This is the skill set I bring to the table when I fight Maynard, or this is the skill set I use when I fight Brennan.
Okay.
When I fight Dietrich, I use a long sword. When I fight Brennan, I use a thrusting tip. No, I fight the way I fight. I use the same length sword every time. I don't want to adjust for any one opponent. But yeah, watch tape and shadow box as one of the fighters. That's the only really helpful thing I can give you right now. As much as it sucks, I've got one of my squires lives 3 miles away, and we're not doing a fighter practice, just he and I. It sucks.
Yeah.
I wish I had a better answer there.
And watch these videos. They'll help you stay motivated.
Well, no, I'm looking forward to. I actually have a private conversation I want to have with you at some point, once things normalize, regarding weightlifting concepts.
Okay.
But that's a different conversation.
Perfect. Okay, we got a couple more questions. I see Richard on camera. Let me get through a couple of these, and then I will open it up to you, Richard, just so they don't keep stacking up on me. Isfile asks, do you have any methodology for retaining learning after stupidly long drive to and from practice? Retaining the learning after a stupidly long drive after practice.
It's never been anything I had to think about. When I figure something out at practice, when I put something, when I hey, you know what, that really worked when I'm doing that, or I worked on this and this is problems I encountered with it. Just thinking about it during the drive reinforces it for me. Again, like I said, I do not watch much tape. I've watched tape of myself maybe half a dozen times. Hell, maybe half a dozen times in the last 10 years. I thought that question was going somewhere else when he started it. But yeah, no, it's never been anything I've had to think about more than just on the drive home. What I find, and what's going to affect a lot of us, all of us, in fact, in order to keep, I've always found that one practice a week is just enough to hold serve. You're not going to get better unless you do 2 practices a week. And that's with the Pell work that, slow work can get you away from that. But most of us don't have the option of doing slow work with anybody. My 16-year-old son has occasionally shown interest in doing this game, and it's hard for me not to draft him on a daily basis to go out and do some slow work with me just so I don't lose my edge.
Okay.
And that's going to be tough for all of us to get around.
Absolutely. Okay, so Michael Hamper asks, on initiative, do you find it better to be an active, throwing the first shot type of fighter, or a reactive type of fighter?
Well, I mean, everybody wants to be reactive. It's counterpunching is great.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy. Well, enjoy is not the right word. I kind of chuckle. I'll drive 3 hours to practice, and I can see the guys I'm fighting think I'm ridiculously hyper aggressive, but they're misinterpreting what's going on. They're sitting there, they're waiting for me to jump in their shorts, and they're just going to hang out at range. The thing is, I drove 3 hours to practice. I didn't drive 3 hours to practice to play a waiting game of cat and mouse. So when I drive to, say, the Nutley practice, and somebody finds it rather easy for me, they can just sit there and bait me into closing. Yeah, I'm going to do that when I drove 3 hours to practice. But if I fight that guy at a tournament, I'm not going to be hyper aggressive. He's doing himself a disservice because mentally he's thinking, every time I fight Tim, he just jumps in my shit and, tries to go postal on me. So I can just sit here and, wait for him to go nuts, and then I'll counterpunch out of it. No, normal circumstances, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. All right. Great answer. I like that, taking the initiative. I'm not going to drive 3 hours to a practice just to play cat and mouse. So we're here to fight. Let's bang. Next question. Is His Royal Majesty Timothy ever going to, this is from Emerson, and it looks like he is Christian King of Antir. Is His Royal Majesty Timothy ever going to pay me for my terrible leg armor he shattered a few years ago at Penzik? He ran over me like I wasn't there.
I have no recollection of that. I do apologize.
Good question. Good question. All right. Now we have some more people that are going to come on camera. Richard, you were on camera first, so go ahead and open your mic up and have a chat.
It's still muted on my end.
Yep. Try now, Richard. There you go.
This is Sir Richard at Morgan from Monsteora. How are you doing?
Real good. How about yourself?
Pretty good. I'm sorry, I was cooking dinner, so I didn't hear the very beginning. So if I ask you something that you've already mentioned, just I'll pick it up later. Just tell me if it was in the beginning. We both fight similar styles. I do, longsword and buckler. And I've seen some of your fights, and fairly similar. I wanted to know, have you ever done any practice, since you like to close, in the box? If you know what I'm talking about.
I recently did that. There's a tournament in the East that I'm assuming where situation is back to normal. I'm going to go to again next year, called Burka. That is a 3 hour long bear pit where each box, it's 10-foot square box. If that's what you.
This is more foot to foot, or an actual 2 foot by 2 foot box drawn on the ground. You have to keep 1 foot in.
I have not done that. That'd be an interesting exercise. Right now, I'm actually working the guys at our practice. I'm kind of going in the opposite extreme.
Mm-hmm.
We have gotten into a rut where they really want to infight. They really want to.
Cool.
They want to stick their heater under your right forearm or to your sword forearm so you can't throw a shot. And
Cool.
that's their thing. So now I'm literally at a bunch of practices. I've put 2 spears on the ground. It's like, okay, you can't get any closer than this.
The opposite.
But I like that, and I think I will give that a try. The way
I'll
I
tell you
fight.
why I did that. I'm 6'4" and have 36-inch, long arms. And I like a longer sword. I fought with short swords, long swords, maces, the whole round. But when I first got in, I was a collegiate fencer when I first joined. And I knew that those little bitty guys getting inside was going to be my biggest nightmare. So I was fortunate to have a much smaller fighter, Rabia Yan, who's third king of Sierra. And I went out to his house every Wednesday and got my leg accordioned with staying in the box with him. Very limber, very fast, very hard hitting. And what you learn is how to calm down once you close. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it was probably before you. It was probably before you got on. With my methodology on buckler fighting is I try and, to use a football analogy, everybody's shot has what they call passing lanes.
Mm-hmm.
From any given stance, there's only certain shots you can throw.
Mm-hmm.
And with a buckler and sword, I'm trying to wall off their passing lane,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually either force them to throw the one shot they can, in which case then I'll take control of their sword with either my sword and hand it off to my buckler, or just directly with the buckler. And as soon as I control their weapon, the fight's over.
Yeah. Same here. And that's what I noticed in your videos. Very similar techniques.
Do you have you got a chance to play with my former men-at-arms, Sonia and Gabriel?
No.
Yeah.
I haven't been active out on the field in a while. But
yeah, couple of my former men-at-arms have moved to Ethelmark on Stewart recently,
cool.
and done pretty well.
I'll look them up. Where are they living in on Stewart?
Dallas.
I'm in San Antonio, so.
I've been to what, that 4 hours, 8 hours?
Yeah. It's a little bit of a drive.
I know I had to, during the big storm a few years back, I had to drive from Dallas to Brownsville and Brownsville to Dallas because of the weather, and that sucked. But
yeah, that's a drive.
Yep. So
anyway,
all right.
Thanks a bunch. Try some box. I think you'll find it fun.
I'll give it a shot. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Perfect. All righty, Rob, go ahead and open up your mic and ask away.
Hey, Tim. Haven't seen you since Aedult Swim. First of all, I want to thank you for throwing that event. I brought some of my guys down this year for their first time, and they're like, when can we go again? When can we go again?
Assuming we have it, we do one at Pensick every year.
Oh, I will have my guys that, and we miss you at Nutley also. I travel like you do. I live on the eastern end of Long Island, so I drive about 3.5 hours to go to Nutley with traffic. But for me, I'm trying to figure out how, when you're in an isolated area like you are, how do you build up your practices to be more of not just slugfest and everybody throwing, to actually get a structured practice going on? I watch on the Facebook group the videos from your guys' Shire practices, but I'm looking for a more defined explanation of it, because we only have a couple of guys, that are all unbelts. We don't have any chivalry here. We will be getting Brick starting, who's Cullen Squire. He just moved out to us, but we don't have a lot of experienced guys to teach or work in our area. And I was wondering how you build that up as being in an isolated area. It's
been awful tough. I mean, for a while, getting people to practice was like pulling teeth. You know, when I first moved to Ethelmark, I guess 11 years ago, at the time, my family still lived in New Jersey. I would come out here and I would work on the house we were building the whole week and then drive out to see my family on the weekends. And I put on Facebook, I put in the local newsletter. When I went to Ethelmark events, I'm like, look, I'm a Duke. I'm a reasonably decent teacher. I live out in the middle of nowhere. Come, you want to train with me? You want to spar with me? What do you want to do? And I couldn't get takers. And once we finally had a couple of fighters local and people realized that we're working with them, that's what brought it. I unfortunately, there's not a good answer. If you have, you know, maybe take one of the video, maybe get your guys together at the practice, you know, say if you're going to have your lids on at 7 p.m., you know, maybe at 6:30, have a bunch of you and say, look, we're going to do structured pel work. One of the drills that we have done on occasion when it's not a full practice and we're kind of like, okay, we don't want to work on something new when it's slack. Kind of a guessing game. You structure the two of you on either side of a pel, and you're doing it with shields, assuming you're fighting sword and shield. And what you're doing is you're trying to see the other fighter's triggers. If I'm throwing from the vanilla stance, I want you to be in the vanilla stance. You have to anticipate where I'm throwing, and you have to beat me to that shot. When I start, say I'm going to start a shot into the left thigh. You, as my opponent on the opposite side of the pel, have to figure out from my body mechanics where I'm throwing and just literally keep score of how often they guess correctly. You want to do it like rock, paper, scissors, where the second I go, you go. Anybody can do it if they wait half a beat. Oh, okay, he's throwing at the leg, and then you throw. But you want to try, it covers a whole lot of stuff, not just pel work. You're actually trying to figure out, okay, Tim has a tell. Every time he's going to throw at the leg, he dips the corner of his shield, and you can see him drop his shoulder. And it forces you, as the aggressive fighter, to cover up your tells, and it gives you the follower, if you will, the ability to track it. I mean, like I said, I really don't have a good answer. It took us a long time with a deep end fighter to get people to come out to practice. In Ethelmark, you have one advantage on Long Island that I do not have here in Ethelmark. The population density here is non-existent. That's not a problem in Long Island. In our shire, we have less than 10 authorized fighters. Maybe 12 authorized fighters, maybe.
Same here.
And that's if I extend that to, say, I bet if I make it a 90-minute radius, I could get 20 fighters authorized. We just don't have the population density. And, you know, if we do a demo, there's not many people we can draw from. I mean, if you know, I was born on Long Island, and I don't know, I'm not really familiar with the geography, but, you know, it certainly seems densely packed. I mean, unless you're out towards, you know, South Hole or Southampton or one of the.
I'm on Stony Brook, so I'm on the eastern end of Long Island.
Okay, yeah, you know, I mean, it's not like you're in Brooklyn, but it's still reasonably population dense. Like I said, I wish I had a better answer for you.
Well, that's great. Thanks for helping me. And when this all over, I'll get some passes with you at Nutley.
No, that'd be fine. I mean, if you guys want, what night is your practices?
We do our baronial practices Monday, and I have a pel workshop and training practice at my place on Thursday, just to get guys out and learning and not just being a slugfest.
All right, if you want to PM me at some point, what we can do is if it would help, you know, I could do a little 5-minute, hey, why don't you guys work on this on the pel at your Thursday workshop? I mean, if that'd help, I'm more than happy to do that.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Right on, right on. Okay, we've got a couple more. We got two more questions. One from Vigor Brand, and then another one from Facebook Land. So, and then we'll probably close this up. So, go ahead, Vigor Brand. Come on video when you're ready and ask away.
Okay. Yeah. So where we live, we're kind of a geographic anomaly. We're literally 3 hours from everywhere. So fighting. Or rather traveling and fighting has always been one of my weaker points because I'm kind of a homebody. With my new job, I tend to go to Houston about twice or three times a year, and we fly.
See,
what's that?
See, I had a couple of business trips to Houston, and my contacts in Dallas told me that there were essentially weren't any fighter practice to speak of in Houston. I mean, that was going back a few years, so maybe it's a different situation now. But yeah, I had brought my gear.
Well, and so that was going to be my question. Maybe I won't take it to Houston, but my question was going to be, have you ever ran in, or rather, what is any trouble or problems you've had taking your gear on a plane if you've gone by plane? Because we fly down there when we go.
The only time I've ever, and I saw the post about, somebody posted up on the chat that they have a practice in Houston. Next time I'm there for business, I'll stop in. The only time I've ever had an issue with my armor twice, my sword didn't make the trip. The rest of my armor was no fuss, no muss, but the rattan sword didn't make the trip. I don't know why. Maybe some TSA agent needed a tire thumper. I don't know. But no, I've never had a problem with that. Typically, I will travel with my buckler rather than my heater, though. But I haven't had a problem flying with my equipment at all, ever. When things settled down, I found a little rinky-dink airline before COVID kicked in. There's a local, BWI's about 2 hours from me. There's a rinky-dink airport that flies to Detroit for Bupkis. I've been planning on road tripping and stopping in at Ron Valder's practice just because he's, just so damn good. But then, of course, we're in the situation we are now, so nobody's traveling if they don't have to. And even if I went up there, there's no, they're not having practice right now. But yeah, I've never had a problem with it.
So maybe don't take your basket with you in case they decide they need another tire thumper.
It's the strangest thing, and both times I had my really choice, gauntlets, $1,200 pair of gauntlets, and mercifully they're still in the armor bag.
Wow. All right. So the last question that we have is from Adam from Facebook Land. He asks, how do you change your mindset from practice to tournament?
That's something I've had to work at. What's helped me learn how to turn it on, because it's tough. I've been doing a thing with any unbelt in our kingdom, and for that matter, any belt if they want it, where come up to me when you want, and we will do 10 fights at my crown level. I won't hold anything back. I will go balls to the wall, all out, no holds barred. And for me, that's given me the ability to turn it on and off. I've never had to think about that when it's a tournament. I've never had to do it. I don't want to get into buzz phrases or sports physiology or anything like that. But when I'm in a tournament, I'm the first one on the field. When they call the names, my helmet is already on. I am on that field. I am in that list, and it's not an intimidation. It's not, I suppose it can be intimidating, but my mindset is, this is my list. You have to take this list away from me. you know, and 95% of the fighters, before they even, the heralds call the fighters' names, they walk into the list and I can see they've already beaten themselves, because this is my list. If you can, if you remember the god awful Star Wars movie Phantom Menace,
Yep.
if you remember right when Darth Maul had just killed Qui-Gon Jinn, and I hate to geek out like this, and he is sitting there pacing, waiting for Obi-Wan Kenobi to walk through the blast shield, whatever the hell it is. He's pacing, he's eager, he's anxious. That perfectly captures the mindset I have. This is mine. I'm ready. I'm waiting on you. Come get me. And like I said, for tournaments, I've never had a problem turning it on. At practice, it took me a long time to get the mindset, and that's how I did it. By you know, telling, if you're an if you're an unbelt, if you're an unbelt, get the deepest guy at the fighter practice to give you 10 of his absolute level best fights. Yeah, yes, it'll suck. Your leg will get pounded or your head will get pounded, but you'll quickly learn how to get in tournament mindset.
Perfect. I think that helps us all get into that mindset. And you and His Royal Majesty Seto from the Middle Kingdom have very similar theories on when you're there, when you show up to a list, he's the first one on the list because he wants everybody to know that it's his list as well. He's the first one in armor, first one with his helmet on, similar to you. So it's pretty cool to hear you both say that same concept, and you're both kings right now. So
I mean, it's at a tournament, you know, like at a crown tournament, when I'm in a crown and I'm focused, you know, everybody, you know, my people know, you know, nobody comes up and breaks my mindset. This would have been about 5 or 6 years ago. About 5 years ago, we had a crown tournament, and I was in the zone with Buckler like I'd never been. I mean, I was just absolutely crushing everybody. And then we had a 3-hour rain delay. When I'm fighting, I typically will, there'll be some song going through my head. You know, it's a you know, it's a powerful bass driven. It's always a bass driven song that's always going through my head, and that it's not like I'm fighting to a beat or anything, but that's kind of my mindset.
Yep.
The first crown I'd won, I listened to War by Edwin Starr for about 3 hours straight before the tournament to get me juiced up. But I had gone from the baseline of Fairies Wear Boots before the rain delay. Literally, I was humming the Turtles' Happy Together when the tournament took back on after the rain delay, and I lost 2 embarrassingly quick fights. But if there hadn't been the rain delay, I would have been very surprised had I not won. I was
Okay.
that in the zone. So mindset is critical.
Absolutely. Okay, perfect. Last chance. Get any questions out there? Last chance.
Thank you all very much. I hope
Yeah.
this was helpful.
Exactly. So, any final thoughts before we cut you loose?
No, just if they do Penzic, come out to Adult Swim.
Okay.
And if they don't have Penzic, Adult Swim, February of next year, look up the Adult Swim group on Facebook or
Okay.
PM me and I'll shoot you an invite with the details. We'd love to have you out. I want to break 1,000 people this year.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's on my list. So, okay. Your Grace, thank you for tuning in or coming on and giving us your 5 methods and telling us a little bit
My
about
pleasure.
yourself.
I hope it was helpful.
Absolutely helpful. So we will see you on the next one, and I will be in touch with you about those questions you have about weightlifting and stuff. So,
Thank you very much.
okay, we'll see you guys. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.